Hi, my name is Lisa Franzen Castle, and I work at the UNL Panhandle Research and Extension Center as the Extension Nutrition Specialist. I have a doctorate in nutrition, and I am also a registered dietitian. And I want to thank you for joining the My Pyramid Steps to a Healthier You podcast series. And this presentation is specifically going to focus on the grains group. And this would be the orange slice of the pyramid. And so what foods do we typically think of when we come to the grains group? Well, that's food made from wheat, rice, oats, cornmeal, barley, or other cereal grains. And so the pictures that you'll see you think of is the bread, the pasta, the cereal, the tortillas. Those are the things we think of with the grains group. And so first I want to talk about the difference between whole versus refined grains. And whole grains contain the entire grain kernel. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is the bran, which is the outer shell and protects the seed. So it's got the fiber, the B vitamins, and the trace minerals. And the germ is the nutrient-rich core. It has the antioxidants, vitamin E, and also has B vitamins. And then there's the endosperm. That provides energy. And it has the carbohydrates and the protein. So that's the starchy bulk of the whole grain kernel. So examples of whole grains are whole wheat flour, bulgur, oatmeal, whole cornmeal, and brown rice. So now we're going to talk about what refined grains are. They're milled. So that means they're removal of the bran in the germ. So you've now taken away the bran, which has the fiber and the vitamins and the minerals, as well as the germ, which is the nutrient-rich core. And some reasons why we take away the fiber and the germ is to give the grain a finer texture, so it smooths it out, as well as it improves the shelf life. But when we do this, we remove the fiber, the iron, and the B vitamins, which are really important for our health. So some examples are white flour, white bread, and white rice would be refined products. And most refined grains are enriched, so they do try to add back in some of those B vitamins like thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and folic acid, and iron, but however, the fiber does not get added back in. And fiber is going to be really important, and that's going to come up later on about how to recognize and clue into whether or not a product is actually a whole grain. So now we're going to talk about what are the recommendations for the grains group. Now the amount that you need depends on your age, your gender, and your level of physical activity. And the recommendations that we're going to talk about is for people that are average active about 30 minutes a day. So for women, 19 to 30 to 51 plus, you go from 6 ounces to 5 ounce equivalents, whereas for men, you start out at about 8 ounce equivalents, about 19 to 30, and it drops down to 6 by the time you're 51 plus. So those are the daily recommendations. And then on the next side, you'll see daily minimum amount of whole grains. And so this is when you've heard maybe about, they say you should make half your grains whole. So like for me, for instance, I fit in the 19 to 30-year-old range. I'm supposed to be getting 6 ounce equivalents a day of grains, and half of those, being 3 ounces, should be whole grains. So I don't know about you, but when I see 6 ounce equivalents, I don't exactly know how that translates to food. So the next slide is going to talk about what counts as an ounce equivalent. So to think in practical terms of how to apply this to actually eating grains. So when we look at bagels, one mini bagel is a 1 ounce equivalent. So one large bagel equals 4 ounce equivalents. Typically, people aren't going to be eating mini bagels. So when you eat a regular sized bagel, that's 4 ounce equivalents of your grains for the day, which is over half of what you need. And then for English muffins, a half muffin is 1 ounce, whereas if you eat a whole English muffin, that's 2 ounces. For breads, one regular slice is 1 ounce, whereas 2 slices equals 2 ounces. So and so on like that. So when I was thinking about this, I thought, what do I usually do? What is my usual grain intake? So I went through and thought about, what do I usually eat for breakfast? Well, instant oatmeal packets sometimes. So 1 packet equals 1 ounce equivalent. For lunch, I usually have a sandwich, but I eat whole grain bread. So I have 2 slices. So 2 slices equals 2 ounce equivalents. And then for dinner, I love rice. So we have a lot of brown rice in our house. I usually probably have about a cup, which would be equal to 2 ounces. And then for a snack, I love wheat thins. And so they said about 7 crackers is equal to 1 ounce. I probably have more like 10. So I say that's about equal to 1 ounce equivalent. So then my total ounce equivalents for the day is about 6 ounces, which is what I'm supposed to be getting. But if we take a closer look at the things I was eating, the oatmeal, the bread, and the rice, 5 out of 6 of my ounce equivalents are whole grain. So it's really easy to get half of your grains being whole if you look at substituting things that you're doing. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So why is it important to eat grains, especially whole grains? Well, there's lots of information out right now talking about the health benefits of whole grains. They can help reduce the risk of coronary heart disease. They can also reduce constipation, keeping things moving smoothly through your body. And then also, eating at least 3 ounce equivalents a day may help with weight management. Research has been looking at the fact that whole grains have more fiber and that it takes longer for your body to break these down and digest them. It's a complex carbohydrate, whereas refined grains get processed very quickly. So they think that this association with having a longer digestion time as well as having more fiber makes you feel fuller longer, so you have an increased sense of satiation. So that's one of the reasons they think that it can help with weight management. And so now I want to talk about some tips to try and eat more whole grains at your meals. Substituting whole grain for a refined product, which is you can use whole wheat bread instead of white bread. And it's really important to substitute as opposed to just add on to what you're doing. Also trying brown rice or whole wheat pasta. Like, for instance, using brown rice stuffing in baked green peppers or tomatoes. My husband just made stuffed green peppers last week and used brown rice, and he's not a brown rice fan, and he couldn't even tell a difference. So this is a really good way to incorporate brown rice into a mixed dish. There's lots of other things in there, so if you're a little hesitant about trying brown rice, use it in a mixed dish, and you're not going to be able to tell a big difference, and you're going to increase your whole grain consumption. Also, trying whole wheat macaroni and cheese is another thing to try. It's in with other flavors, so it's not going to be such a drastic change, but you're making a healthier choice. And then also you could create a whole grain pilaf using barley, wild rice, brown rice, broth, and spices. And substituting whole wheat or oat flour in baking. And you can use up to half of the flour, the whole wheat flour, in pancake, waffle, or muffin recipes. And they've done research with kids in schools where they took pizza crust and breadsticks and dinner rolls, and they put up to half of the recipe with whole wheat flour. The kids didn't even notice a difference, and their consumption rates of those items did not change. When they went up to 75%, they could start to see a difference, but you can use up to half and you really can't tell. Or maybe if you're a little skittish about trying that, do 25% of the recipe with whole wheat flour, and then gradually move your way up. So you change your preference for those kinds of things. And then also, if you like using breading on your chicken or your fish, try rolled oats or crushed unsweetened whole grain cereal. So if you don't want to give up your breading, maybe just try a healthier version of it. Then also, tips to help eat whole grain as snacks. Cereal is a great thing to snack on ready-to-eat whole grain cereals. It's a lot better than snacking on chips. You could put them in a baggie, have them with you in your purse or in the car. So when you are hungry and you need to go for something, it's a lot healthier choice. Also, like I said, baked food in the last slide, add whole grain flour or oatmeal when you're making baked treats. Also, whole grain snack chips, like baked tortilla chips instead of using the fried chips. And popcorn. It's a whole grain that is healthy when there's not a lot of salt and butter added to it. So a lot of times we've got perfectly healthy foods, but we like to add a bunch of stuff onto them that decreases the health factor. I know my husband likes to make popcorn on the stove, so we use very little oil, a little bit of salt, maybe some spray butter. It's a lot healthier than the stuff you buy in the store, and it's a really fun snack to do at home. And also, a really important thing for whole grains is reading the label. I'll say this a lot through the series. Labels are your friend. Don't be afraid to read them and make comparisons. It's really important when you're looking for whole grain products to look on the ingredient list for the first thing on the list. So it should say something like brown rice, bulgur, graham flour, oatmeal, or whole grain corn, whole oats, rye, wheat, wild rice. These are the things you want to look for the first ingredient on the list. And then also, like I said, fiber is a really good clue as well. So choose products that have higher fiber because you're more likely to have more whole grain. And then labels to watch out for. Now, if you go to the bread aisle, there are so many different types of bread with all kinds of different labels and things on the outside of the packaging. So things that say multigrain, stone ground, 100% wheat, cracked wheat, 7-grain, or bran, this does not necessarily mean they're a whole grain product. So it's really important to pay attention to that first thing on the ingredient list, as well as look at the fiber content. These are going to be 2 huge clues as to whether or not it's a whole grain product. And also another thing, brown color does not equal whole grain. So you could have molasses or other ingredients that could change the color and make it brown or have a tint of brown. So that doesn't mean it's a whole grain product either. So again, labels are your friend, really important to check those out. So in summary, when we're talking about grains, food labels are your friend. I can't say that enough. And try and make at least half your grains whole. When I went through my usual intake, it's really easy to make half your grains whole if you practice substitution. So substituting whole grain for a refined product is really important. And so in summary, I just want to say thanks for listening, and to be brave and broaden your food horizons.
Don't let your health slip